Course, you're here because there's a certain interest in what certain terms they reflect. It's something that resonates with you. Is that right? In other words, it's either Advaita, it's either Ramana, it's Nisargadatta, it's enlightenment, it's moksha, it's any one of those Upanishads or Bhagavad Gita. And therefore, that has drawn you here for a purpose. Now, I trust that whoever's here is already sort of qualified. So that means that to be here, you've already gone through certain, you've done a rational decision. You're not just here because of curiosity, right? So there's already a sort of a knowledge, an experience in this marketplace. Okay. And one of the primary qualifiers for Advaita Vedanta, for understanding the non-dual nature of reality and that you are non-separate from it, is that what nobody really talks about is the qualifications. So it's very easy to be attracted to what it means, what all the scriptures are talking about, what Sri Krishna is talking about, what all of these messages are all pointing to that one eternal nature, which is you, and you're non-separate from it. That's what the total means, yes? So to get to that point, it's not as simple as just jumping in and saying, well, that's what attracts me. There's no skipping here, by the way. Because the way the system is set up, Ishvara, we're going to talk a lot about Ishvara, what the relationship is between you, God, consciousness, all of that. The way it's set up, there's no skipping here. For example, you don't have winter followed by summer. Right? There's a order, there's a complete order. There's no gravity that chooses to just take a break or take a hike one day. Because, say, the gravity is like, well, I've been, working overtime and I've been, pulling things down eternally. I'm just going to take a break now. So it doesn't work like that here. It's a complete order. That means what? Moksha, which is the last stage of life, by the way, after dharma, artha, and kama, moksha is the last stage, and that means to get to moksha, there is no skipping what you're supposed to do in life, okay? So it's a very important point because a lot of us jump in because we're either excited and we think we're qualified. So that's why in part 1 of Vedanta, we're going to talk a lot about the jiva, you as a person. Okay, so I'm relating to now you, the body, the mind, your feelings, who you are as a person, your worldly person. Because that one has to get addressed before we can jump into understanding the non-dual nature of things, that I am not separate from you and there's only one of us here. There's only one I, and that's me, you, consciousness. To understand that versus it just being an intellectual statement, that takes a certain qualification. So that's why we're first going to address you as a person, okay? Who you are and what part you play in this world before we can jump into these other topics which we all want to hear about. Okay. Guys, would you like to perhaps walk over here and take a seat, get yourself comfortable? Okay, we're going to start with a prayer. Okay, we're going to read from the top. Is anyone versed in Sanskrit here? I just want to see how to adjust teaching. Okay, and the Devanagari, okay, of course, obviously. Okay, so, by the way, this is traditional Vedanta in a non-traditional way. What that means is that I'm going to simplify it without losing the essence. Because if you spend some time in India, for example, in South Kerala, in India, I've done both sides, and in the traditional Vedanta, it's basically like going to a Sanskrit class. So that means that you're learning a lot about individual words, and we take, for example, Tejasvina, and we take Maoist, Shanti, and then we break them down, and then we talk about each word before moving on. So I'm not going to do that because Westerners' approach is a little different. For you guys, you just see there's a little difference. So we have to adjust to how Westerners learn and then how Indians learn. This is a tradition from India. It's as old as mankind. But I'm going to simplify it so that you understand what these, they call Mahavakyas, Sanskrita Mahavakyas mean, so that Mahavakya means a great statement, like Tattvamasi or Aham Brahmasmi. You heard of that? Okay, so that means I am Brahman. Now, to understand what I am Brahman means, that's where I'm going to simplify it so that the language and the jargon that we Westerners appeal to can directly understand it. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahe Tejasvina Vadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, let's go through what this amazing prayer actually means. May the Lord, being a source of the blessing, being the source of this knowledge, being the source of all that is, may that one protect both of us, that is, both the student and the teacher. May he or she nourish both of us with this knowledge that we're about to embark on, that we're about to understand directly. So this statement simply says that may we surrender to that one because of which this knowledge can be understood. That same one which is causing your digestion to digest the food now, by the way. Are you digesting your food? No. Are you moving the neurons and the dendrites firing off electrical impulses from one neuron to the next? Are you causing that to happen right now? No. So every word I'm saying, the output is received by your stimulus, and therefore the stimulus is processing the words and connecting it to something that's already set, and you're not doing any of that. So that energy, the one that's beating your heart, the one that's moving the leaves, that Lord is the one that we surrender to for this knowledge to be embarked on, to be understood. May both of us make effort for capacity required for knowledge to be imparted by the teacher and to be received by the student. So here it addresses both of us. It's always both of us because this is a non-dual reality. That means there's no difference between the one standing on this side or that side. If there was, then that would collapse the definition of Advaita. That means not two. So what we're saying here is let both the student, okay, let that one make the effort to have an open mind, to pause to their already prescribed ideas that have already been bought in the previous marketplace, in the previous verses, scriptures, and all of the things that you've already heard and understood. Let that one make an effort to suspend that, at least while we're in the class. Just like when we go out and we put our shoes outside, similarly, we need to put our preconceived ideas and our notions outside. Because the thing is, you may think I've heard this before, yeah? There's nothing that I can say that you haven't heard before. But the problem is, how do you know that when you absorb that knowledge, you were fully assimilating and understanding it in that moment? There could have been a few factors which were devoid or missing out in that particular moment that caused you to grasp that knowledge partially. And so we carry that partial knowledge and we think, well, I've heard this, I know it. But that's not the case. There's always depth to everything. Is that the case? Is that understanding? There's always depth to everything. Just like if you go into a first relationship, you think, well, I'm pretty versed, I'm pretty good in my relationship. I know relationships. But as soon as you get into a second one, you realize how much the first one you actually didn't know very much. Yeah? So that's what we mean by the depth, the understanding, and the student, that is, has to absolutely suspend these beliefs because it is what stands in your own way and prevents from this knowledge from the output to the input, or the input to the output being identical. Okay, so this knowledge, this obstacle prevents that. So you need to say, okay, I'm here now. Let's just suspend and let's just be open to what is about to be received. And similarly, the teacher has to make an effort too. You don't hear this very often, right? It's either one side or the other. Now, why does the teacher have to make an effort? Because if they don't, if they say, oh, I've taught this before 100 times, so they just start parroting their information. So there's no dynamism, you see? So it has to be dynamic exchange. And also one more factor that stands in the way is a student plays a very important part for both the teacher and the student to be blessed or to shine in the class. And what that means is that if there is no feedback from the student, that means what? How is the teacher supposed to know how he or she is doing? Right? So what I'm asking is your participation. I'm asking you to shine, that is, ask, inquire, and whatever doubts come up, you need to bring that up. Because it's my job to address every single doubt until the whole totality, that is Brahman, is understood and there's not a single doubt. Because what does totality mean? That means nothing is excluded. That means that there's one thing that I do not understand. If one doubt comes up, that means I'm not part of the totality. There's some obstacle, some obstruction still pertaining or blocking me from understanding. So for that reason, both the student and the teacher are on the equal level. We're just equal. And another thing that comes up is that this is never about the teacher. Whoever it is, whether it's this guy, whether it's somebody else, it's never about the teacher. They're just a mouthpiece. The truth in all of this comes from the scriptures themselves. That which is from the beginning, and it's non-negatable. That's what knowledge means. Absolute knowledge. Absolute knowledge is what cannot be negated. Relative knowledge is what always has a different point of view, and you can look at it from another point, and as soon as you do, you destroy the previous. So we're discussing here in this class absolute knowledge, that who you are, existence itself. Okay. May what is studied be brilliantly clear, meaningful, free from vagueness. So once again, it's bringing us to the point that we need to ask questions pertaining to the doubt that's personal to you. And similarly, the teacher has to make effort to fully ask you, what do you mean? So that we're both talking the same language. Okay? Because for you, the self is different than from the understanding of somebody else who says self or consciousness or the total. So we have to be absolutely precisely clear on every single point. It's just like Vedanta is like neurosurgery. Now, when a doctor, for example, a neurosurgeon, when he operates on a patient, can a neurosurgeon just say, oh, I'm just going to kind of get dinner, wife dinner, 8 o'clock, so I'm just going to pull a few threads here and, get this job over and done with as quickly as I can? Is that the case with a neurosurgeon? No way. They're going to take all the time that is necessary until the job is complete. So similarly here, we have to take every single moment until we're absolutely clear on what everything means. So that's what it means to be brilliantly clear. May we not be subject to any kind of misunderstanding, so that this communication is complete. So similarly, this goes back to talking the same language, and there will be questions and answers, by the way. Not yet, because we haven't established a common ground. We haven't begun the teaching yet. We're just setting the preliminary requirements. Okay, let there be freedom from 3 possible obstacles. Now, the question is, what are these 3 obstacles? Did you ever notice in spirituality, we always have 3 shantis? Why is that? Okay, they're addressing obstacles. Now, what are these obstacles? The first obstacle is, Om Shanti, is personal obstacles. So every one of us has certain purchased beliefs. We've been on the marketplace and we have purchased certain ideas. We have bought them and they sounded good, they made sense, and we just took them up to be complete. That's it, my journey's over. So those beliefs can be obstacles. Just like I said at the beginning, those obstacles because of which this knowledge, when imparted, when said precisely, won't be received by the other side. That is because those obstacles are still standing in the way. And then what happens is then the student projects that onto the teacher and says, well, they don't understand what they're talking about. I'm going to go elsewhere. I need to see something that sounds better, that looks better, that appeals to my senses. We've all had this experience, haven't we? So we stand in our own, and this is a huge dilemma in a spiritual community to understand this, because we're constantly projecting our ideas. So here we're saying that the obstacle that we're asking Bhagavan, Lord, is to help us to suspend those obstacles which can both obstruct the teacher and the student. Because sometimes you don't know. Maybe someone's had a bad day and you still, there's still a part of you thinking about the argument with a colleague. And so those obstacles can prevent us from receiving this information. So we're just asking, help me to remove these obstacles so that when this teaching is imparted or expounded as per the Upanishads, Mahavakyas, and the statements from the Bhagavad Gita, which we'll get into, let me understand that precisely. Okay. And let me understand those statements that when I read them by myself, right, you guys read spiritual material, let me understand those statements, what they mean directly versus me interpreting what I would have them be because of my veil covering my existence of my nature and the world and everything else. So the world gets interpreted through the veil. It's called Maya. And we're going to hear in this class talk about how to remove this veil so that this reality, this total reality, the supreme truth is understood directly. Not intellectually. This is not an academic class, by the way. This is not saying, oh, I understand that I am the total. That's intellectual. This is direct understanding I am that, and there's no doubt about it. Okay, so that's why we're here. We're not here as an academic. I'm not a professor. This is just direct. You could call it an experience, even though it's not an experience, because freedom means freedom from experience. That's what moksha means. You are free from all experience of the world, experience of your own mind, your thoughts, freedom from everything. We're going to get into and investigate what this really means so that it doesn't sound or appear intellectual. So that's why we're digging into the depth of this. Okay. The second obstacle is environmental factors. So there were a number of people that subscribed. There were actually about 100. And knowing that you can already predict that out of the 100, it's gonna drop down, especially if it's free. Like, what can I learn at a free event? Okay, so that's what we mean by environmental factors. Sometimes you may be willing to learn, you may be willing to receive, you may be absolutely motivated and say, you know what, I am ready, I want to know, I wish to understand this reality. But what happens is environmental factors come up. Somebody gets sick. Your boss says you're working overtime tonight. For example, your children need you. Or your husband or your wife wants you to come home early because they have a special event for you. So those environmental, or maybe a flood, or maybe your car breaks down, or maybe you missed the plane you missed your flight. So all of these environmental factors contribute to me not showing up and therefore stripping my freedom away. And just imagine a whole life of events, external events, the totality of them, keep coming up every single moment. How long can one go? They end up in the grave because they never asked for this guidance, for this help, for the environmental factors. That is, Lord, please bless me, remove these environmental factors which prevent my freedom, prevent my nature of who I am and who I always was and can never be anything other than that. So the whole life can go by these environmental, external objects pulling us left and right. You know this from your own experience, don't you? Okay. And the third shanti is okay, so even though you may have an open heart and everything's fine, your car is working safely, and you're ready to receive, you're smart, intelligent, and you're willing, and you're motivated. What happens is, sometimes there are unseen forces that act upon and prevent us from assimilating or digesting or understanding the material. Now, you know what I mean by this. For example, you know you're smart, you know you're intelligent and rational, okay, you know that. But then why is it that sometimes something can be said really good and you know people got it, but you didn't? You know everyone's got it, but you didn't. Or sometimes you get it, but sometimes you don't. What caused the first time not to get it? These environmental factors and these personal factors. And in this case, the third shanti, we're asking, please remove and help me to remove the obstacles to these factors that prevent me, which I'm not aware of, because there's a lot of going on in creation we're going to learn about. Let these factors be removed so that I can assimilate and understand this information. That's why sometimes we feel dull some nights and some mornings we feel sharp, or vice versa. So there's all of these factors that we got to first ask for to be in our favor before this information can be imparted. Okay? Any questions on this beautiful prayer? You can see it's a beautiful prayer. It addresses both the teacher and the student. And it acknowledges both of us. We are both subject to these three forces. We can both be dull. We can both be sharp. So let's just ask for help, Bhagavan, the Lord, so that the information and the teaching can begin. Yeah, all clear? Cool. All right. Okay, so this course is consists of three categories, and the first one is we're going to talk about the jiva, you as a person with feelings, emotions, and we're going to take quite a lot of time on that, because before we can understand the reality, as I said at the beginning, we need to fully address this person. That's the biggest obstacle, by the way. Because, for example, you guys know about Neo-Advaita? Okay, so what they'll say is, don't worry about your feelings. Don't worry about your emotions, and don't worry about, wealth and all of that. That's all Maya. That's all illusion. That's all a dream. You just focus on the self, and you keep your mind there until there's a, quote, a merger, which isn't actually a merger because that implies duality. So we're not putting down their teachings, by the way. We're just saying they're good teachings, but they're incomplete. So therefore, the individual ends up going years and years and years to a satsang, and nothing really happens, nothing real happens. They're still driven by these desires, still driven by the passions to live and to be in a relationship and to love and to do all the worldly normal things. So for that reason, we're not denying you as a person, you see? Okay, so that's the first one. Jiva. Now, the second is Jagat. Jagat means in Sanskrit, the world. The world means Ishvara. Ishvara is the world. That is creation. So we're going to talk a lot about what is creation. How is creation created? What are the steps? Okay, now there is no steps, by the way, because that implies time and space. But for the sake of the mind understanding, we're going to break it down into steps. So that, now what's the point of creation? But here's the important point. Moksha is understanding Ishvara. That is, moksha means knowing who you are not. Now, you probably heard moksha is understanding who I am. Moksha is understanding who you are not. Because you have to first understand who am I not in order to discriminate self from non-self. That which is eternal, true, and always unchanging over that which changes constantly. Okay, so that's what moksha means. So we have to develop that capacity, that intellect, so that we're absolutely clear, who am I not? And the basis of this is the body and the mind, of course. I believe I'm the body and the mind. Now, you've heard this before, right? I'm not the body and the mind. But how does one genuinely know what this means? That's what this course is about. We're going to dig very, very deeply through 66 sessions. This is the first session, by the way, until we arrive to the final truth, to the final reality. Okay. As I said, this is not a shortcut, and you can't have a shortcut to this. If there was shortcuts, we would have a whole bunch of, quote, enlightened beings out there completely happy and satisfied, okay? So there is no, I know you don't want to hear this, but it takes a while to arrive to the final truth until you're no longer confused between who am I and who am I not. Okay. Can I just see a show of hands? How many of you have already had some kind of experience with the Bhagavad Gita or one of the Upanishads? Okay. All right. And do you have a teacher? Are you just doing this by yourself? This is a self-study? Yes, self-study. It's mostly self-study, isn't it? Okay. The problem with the self-study is, of course, this is a hard message to hear, but you're going to hear it anyway. It's useless. Why? Why is self-study useless? The scriptures were never meant to be studied by the ignorant person. When I say ignorant, I don't mean as an insult. It doesn't mean stupid. Ignorance is anything that is born is ignorant. Okay? There is no reason to be born if there is total understanding of reality. So anything that is born is ignorant by default. That means ignorance is not your fault. That means ignorance, anything that is born, is what? Creation. Now, for creation to occur, you have to have what? You have to have polarity, two sides. For example, a mountain. There is a sun shining on one side and there is shadow on the other side. Okay, now, is the mountain complete with just the sun or just the shadow? It's incomplete. You need both sides, and that makes the whole mountain, for example. So anything that is created by default, whether it's a baby, whether it's a avatar, whatever it is ignorant. Because it's Maya. It's creation. So that means ignorance, that is the statement, I am ignorant, I don't know, that is not your fault. It cannot be. Did you create this world, by the way? Did you just, before birth, did you cobble up this world? You say, I want to create some love, peace, contentment, stack that up in the shelves. I'm going to create the brain. I'm going to create how nature works. I'm going to create the alignment of the planets. I'm going to create how the sun, in which direction it rises. I'm going to create the periodic table of elements. I'm going to create how the birds fly to the north. I'm going to create the seasons. Did you do that? Did you do any of that? No. You don't even understand your own body. When we get sick, we go to the doctor. Something that is with us all the time, we don't even understand that. In other words, you didn't create anything here. So then why are you taking it so hard on yourself? See? You just came here as a little child, and then suddenly all of this ignorance by default was just passed on to you. You had no choice. Your parents had no choice either, because ignorance was passed on to them also. So ignorance continues. It's eternal. Maya is never going to go away. Maya is there as long as me, consciousness, is there. So there's no point of getting rid of Maya. There's no point of getting rid of ignorance. Only understanding what ignorance is, and automatically ignorance dissipates. Because you cannot get rid of ignorance. Ignorance is creation. You're trying to get rid of the world. This is what some Buddhists say, well, there's just, you got to get to a stage and there's just nothing. The world's going to disappear. I've been with these guys. I hung around with them all my life. So I know everything they say. They say the world is going to disappear. It doesn't disappear. For the enlightened one, we'll talk about what that means. The world doesn't disappear. Everything's still the same. Just the status of the world has changed. Now, this is a very important point. That means the world is known not to be real. Not intellectually, directly. That means the world, whatever appears, that is the object, is known to not be real. That's what moksha is. And the one that is real is who? The subject. There's only two things in existence. There's the subject, awareness, self-existence, and there's the object. That's Maya. So moksha means knowing that everything here in this world, whatever it is, if you want to go to other planets, that's fine. If you want to go to other dimensions, that's fine also. If you want to talk about Nirvikalpa Samadhi, by the way, what all the yogis preach, that's also what? Maya. It's got nothing to do with me. Consciousness, you. That's just another what? Experience. Now that's a big hit for a lot of spiritual people to hear. I thought enlightenment was a blissful state. I thought it was something that I'm going to be eternally happy. Well, which avatar, which individual who you respect ever had a 24-hour posture like this? Come on. So let's get real. So enlightenment simply means that I know that the world is not real. And the only thing that is real is that one because of which all experiences are known for what they are. That one because of which the world is known. That one because of which the emotions, your feelings, everything is known. Without you, there's nothing that can be known, can there? Because, why? Are you aware of your body? Are you aware of your body?
Yep.
Okay. Are you aware of sitting here in this room?
Yep.
Okay. If I take that awareness away, could you be aware then? No. So what does that mean? The content doesn't matter. The experience doesn't matter. Whether it's a good experience or what you would equate to a negative experience, it doesn't matter. Who's the one because of which that experience is known? You just said it. You, awareness. Okay, so what I'm talking about is awareness, existence. Okay, and the third section consists of Jiva Jagat and Ishvara. Now, in the Indian culture, there is a confusion with Ishvara to equate both awareness and Maya, that is the real and the unreal. Mithya, we're going to talk about what this is. Satya. Satya means the truth, and Mithya means apparently real. In other words, Satya real and Mithya apparently real. Now, what does apparently real mean? Now, this is a very important point. What do you see here? A jumper, okay. I say you see wool. Yeah? I see a jumper, but I also see wool. Because it is wool, isn't it? Now, what happens if I cut the sleeves off? Is it a jumper then? No. It's a cloth. It's a handkerchief. It's a curtain. So in other words, what? Apparently real means it's that until it's no longer that. It's a jumper until it's no longer a jumper. Then it's what? It's a cloth. It's a handkerchief. It's a curtain. So what has changed? The form. The form. The label, the name and the form has changed. But what has remained? The substance, because of which the label, the name and the form can be what they are. The curtain cannot be a curtain without the wool. The jumper cannot be a jumper without the wool. The handkerchief cannot be a handkerchief without the wool. Okay? So what does this mean? Consciousness is that because of which the whole creation, everything is possible. And you are that consciousness. Without the wool, there is no jumper, is there? So that's what apparently real means. It's that until it's no longer that. That's why it's changing. What has changed? It's constantly changing. It doesn't matter. I could turn this into a little stress ball. It doesn't matter what it is. But this essential substance never changes. The wool. Okay. So, Jiva, Jagat, and Ishvara. So Ishvara, as I said, in the Hindu tradition, they equate to both one and the same. Now, that is true because there's only one reality, Brahman. For the sakes of teaching, we're going to divide them. We're going to call this Ishvara 1 and this Ishvara 2. Okay? Ishvara 1 and Ishvara 2. Now, we're going to explain why we're going to do this. Because if I just say Ishvara, you're not going to know what am I talking about. Is it Satya? Is it the truth or is it Mithya? Is it real or is it the unreal? So for that reason, we're going to talk in a form of from now on Ishvara 1 and Ishvara 2. Now, Jiva, Jagat, and Ishvara. The last Ishvara is the self. Okay? Because remember, Jagat, the world, is what? Ishvara 2. The world's changing, isn't it? Now, finally, Jiva, Jagat, and Ishvara is going to be Ishvara 1. That is consciousness, awareness. Okay. A question of inquiry. A very basic question. Do you exist? Do you exist? Are you sure?
No.
Huh?
It depends.
I love it. No, yeah, no, yes.
Well, I don't know if I exist. But I know existence.
But do you exist?
Well, I mean,
When I say you, I'm talking about just the overall, just the general sense
I know,
of you.
yeah, but when I'm asleep, I don't know.
Okay, we're going to get into the 3 states by it's called Mandukya Upanishad. Okay, let's just take the waking state. Do you exist right now?
Yes.
Okay, if somebody said no, here's the logic. How can you say no when you're having a rational response to my question? That means you have to exist in order to answer yes or no, right? So that means what? You cannot, okay, try not to exist. You're smart, right? You're smart. Now, apply all of your IQ, all your intelligence to not exist. Yeah, you see? So what does that mean? You can't do anything about your existence. It's a simple statement. I exist. And that existence is self-awareness. It's very simple, actually. Moksha is actually simpler than 1 + 1. Do you know why? Here's why. If a tiger, well, let's take a tiger. Let's take a snake. You're walking by and you approach a snake. You were happy, okay? And suddenly a snake shows up and it looks very vicious. It wants to bite you. In that moment, are you thinking about, or is it possible to know what 1 + 1 is in that moment? In that very moment when fear has overtaken you, is it possible to calculate the easiest thing in the world, 1 + 1? No way. It doesn't even occur to you. All that is fear. There's a snake and I'm going to protect myself. Right? But what happens later on when you're telling, why is it that you're capable of telling your friend about that circumstance? What ability do you have that causes you to speak about that circumstance when you were in total fear? Your awareness. Because how would you be able to report what happened unless you were there? You understand? So that means what? You were there even during the most fearful moment of your life. Your existence never got touched. That's why it's so simple. That means what? Your existence is always there, but what changes? The experience. Fear experience, love experience, sorrow experience, the happy experience. But what never changes? Me, consciousness, existence. So that's why I say it's easy the 1 plus 1. Because 1 plus 1, you can think when you're okay with it, when you're fine. But when you're not, then 1 plus 1 goes out the window. But what doesn't go out the window? Me, existence. Right? You follow me? Okay. So that's what we're going to cover. Jiva, Jagat, and Ishvara. Now, Vedanta means, as you know, Vedas is 4 Vedas. Now, the Vedanta takes everything that's the end of the Vedas. That is why would this knowledge be at the end of the Vedas? Because hardly few people ever get there. So they put it right at the end. And the first, beginning, middle, deals with Dharma, that is moral responsibility. Now, we all have Dharma, we all have how to deal with the world and how to be generally good. You have that. Deals with Artha. Artha is wealth and security. Now, we all have a need to have security, have wealth. Yeah. When I say wealth, I mean just a general sense of certainty that everything's okay, that I'm going to wake up in the same bed next day. And we all have what? Kama. Kama is, you've heard of the Kama Sutras. Now, the first thing that comes to mind, it's not it, even though it's part of it. Kama is just a sense of how to live in a pleasant way. Right? How to live, how to experience pleasure which I'm worthy of. In other words, Dharma, Artha, and Kama. Do you have to be told to pursue Dharma, Artha, and Kama? Do you have to be told to pursue that? No. We pursue that naturally. Who doesn't pursue pleasure? Who doesn't pursue wealth and security? Who doesn't pursue just general ethics? But the last one, moksha, it has a special status. Not a status as in the individual status. I mean a special status that you have to be told. That's why we have the world in the state that it is, because we're pursuing what? On a larger scale. We're pursuing Dharma, Artha, and Kama. Yeah, because it's natural. But we have to be told to pursue moksha. And that's why you're here, because you've read about this, so that's why you've showed up. That's why we're always going to have small numbers. This is never going to be big, popular tradition. It's always going to be very small because, as I said at the beginning, ignorance by default is Maya. And Maya is spell of what? Separation. And so that causes me to what? Engage in wealth for myself, pleasure for myself, and Dharma for myself. So, as I said, it's not your fault. Anything that is born is naturally ignorant. So therefore, we have to be re-educated who I am. So what we're doing in this course is we're reversing the definition of the I. When you say I, what are you referring to? Are you referring to your body and your mind? Or are you referring to that existence, which is always free of what? Experience, including your body and your mind. That's why moksha means what? Permanent satisfaction. No matter what, it doesn't touch me. It's not thrilled or it's not super excited. It's just everything's okay because I'm eternal. It's just that simple understanding that everything's fine. Nothing in this world touches me. I am existence, because of which, what? The entire world, I am the wall because of which all forms can take place. So, and I am free from that. And it doesn't touch me because the essential nature of the wall doesn't change, does it? If he takes on a jumper, the wall doesn't change. If he takes on a curtain, the wall doesn't change. If he takes on a stress ball, the wall doesn't change. What changes? The form. But the nature never changes. And that nature is you. That's what Tat Twamasi means. You are that. You, we're going to talk about reflected jiva, but we'll say you, that is your sense of you, are that existence. Tat Twamasi. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. So let's start with the Bhagavad Gita. And the Bhagavad Gita is both a Dharma Shastra and a Moksha Shastra. Shastra is a scripture. Dharma Shastra is how to live. That is how to live on earth. It's a fair question. How do I live on earth that when I do so, it would cause success in every area? It would cause success in Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. How to live in such a way that every action leads me to Moksha? It's a fair question. Like how to live so that I don't waste my time on earth. How to live so that whatever I do, with whomever I do it, and however I do it, in whichever way I do it, it actually helps me as an evolution, as a spiritual being. How do I do that? So that's what the first part of chapter 3, 4, 5, and then it's revisited in chapter 18 in Bhagavad Gita, talks about. And it's applicable to all of us, and it's genius how it's set up. It's a way that you never waste your time, no matter what you do. It's quite a stretch to say, right? That you actually never waste your time. Even driving a car, you're not wasting your time. That's quite a stretch, but it's absolute. You'll see what I mean by that. We're going to talk about karma yoga, and it's an ingenious way how to live so that whatever you do, it leads you to this ultimate supreme reality, which you are. And so the Bhagavad Gita is the main text of this course because it's one of the premier texts of Vedanta. And it's also going to talk about, as I said, Dharma Shastra and Moksha Shastra. That means it's also an instruction manual how to attain, even though it's not an attainment, moksha. Okay, so that means how to live in such a way and what are the steps required to understand the supreme reality. Now, as a question is going to pop up, as someone's going to say, what's the authenticity of this Bhagavad Gita? Because there's many authors of this book, right? Every new Swami that comes in the field does a new translation of the Bhagavad Gita, because the original text is in Sanskrit, and the translator, what understanding does the translator have? You gotta ask that, because if they're translating it from the point of view of Advaita, that is Krishna consciousness, you've heard of that, the book, the As It Is version, they believe in Krishna is some entity separate from me, and it's my job to live Dharma Shastra, how to live so that I will accumulate enough good deeds so that one day I will get to sport with Krishna, and therefore I'll get to join with Krishna consciousness. So that's how the trick can happen, is that the person, a sincere seeker, will be reading this and they will interpret it according to the era of the translator. Yeah. So this Advaita means reality is non-separate. That means there is no over there. Everything's already here. It's like air. There is no air over there. Air is already here. So you don't need to go over there into a higher state. You don't need to go into some Krishna consciousness or some Christ consciousness. Advaita means not to. That means there's no separation between anything. There's only the total, and you are that total, meaning everything is accessible in this very moment. That's why moksha is actually so easy, because the problem is we look for moksha elsewhere. We think the self, I am the self, and it's somewhere else. I need to merge yoga. I need to have a state. I need to experience it. You heard of that one? I need to experience. And when I experience, the small self will connect with the big self, and then I will become the big self, and then everything's going to be fine from then on. You see the duality in there? That means I am separate from that which I'm seeking. When in reality you already are what you're seeking. The meditator is what they're meditating on, but they don't know that. They're meditating on something else. The seeker is the sought. It's a non-dual reality, and it doesn't contradict Advaita because they're in two different orders of the one same reality. That's an important point. So there is no contradiction between Dvaita and Advaita. And we're going to talk about what this actually means. So in other words, there's nothing that we do not disagree with because there's just only the total. Okay. So let's start. We got 30 minutes or so on the Bhagavad Gita. And I'm going to summarize the story of the Bhagavad Gita so we can get into it for the purposes of teaching. Just a quick diagram I drew up with some scribbles. Okay. So far we have established two things. Dharma Shastra, Moksha Shastra. Now, we're now going to talk about the story that summarizes the Bhagavad Gita and the teaching which reflects, and the teaching starts from what Krishna advises Arjuna. That is how to live and how to attain moksha. So, there's two families in the Bhagavad Gita. One is called the Kauravas and one is called the Pandavas. Now, the Kauravas and the Pandavas are both under the patronage of a great illustrious king called Dhritarashtra. He's over there, Dhritarashtra. And another man that comes into the picture is called Bhishma. And he is like the wise guru. He's like the caretaker, the father for both families. He advises them dharma, how to live in a successful way. So they have a lot of respect. Both families, the Kauravas and the Pandavas, have a lot of respect for both their patronage figure, which is Dhritarashtra, and their so-called father, which is Bhishma. Dhritarashtra and Bhishma. And there's another character that comes into play. His name is Drona. Drona is a wise Brahmin, and he's proficient in the art of warfare and archery. Back then, there was just a skill to learn, to know about. And so these three characters, all characters play a part in the story so far. Now, what happens is, in the Kauravas, we have 100 sons. Okay? And the oldest son is called Duryodhana. You've heard of him, probably. Duryodhana is an important figure. Duryodhana will be that part of us which we all resonate with, whether you're spiritual or not, selfish, greedy, manipulative part that's never happy with anything. It always wants more. His name is more. Not enough, more. That one. Okay, we all have it. Because remember, we all have a body too. So we're both spiritual and material. That's why we have this conflict. We don't know which one we are. Am I the spiritual or the material? And the Pandavas, we have a very well-respected, liked figure who is to be the next heir to the throne to take over from Dhritarashtra, and his name is Dharmaputra. Dharmaputra is loved by all. He's very wise. He's a very successful, intelligent person, and it's very clear that he's going to take over the heir to the throne over the illustrious king when the king dies. Now, Duryodhana, that part of us which we've discussed, is absolutely jealous. He doesn't like the Pandavas. He wants to destroy them, and he's trying to destroy them since the beginning. He's just not happy with these guys. The Pandavas brothers are clearly succeeding. Dharmaputra from the Pandavas family, the brother, is clearly going to be the next heir to the throne, so he wants to destroy them. And he does everything, and all his attempts are completely unsuccessful. So, one night he wants to burn down the lakh house, which the Pandavas are sleeping in. And they're sleeping with their mother Kunti. And their uncle, called Vidura, See, that's number 7 now. We're following an order here. Their uncle Kunti warns them that the house is going to burn down. So the Pandavas, that is the 5 brothers, and Kunti, their mother, escape before the house burns down. And everyone thinks they're dead. And Duryodhana is apparently happy. We don't know what happens with him, but everyone thinks he's dead. Now, a few days later, there is a great ceremony, a marriage ceremony, for a beautiful, gorgeous, intelligent young woman called Draupadi. And she is to be won by the greatest archer in the country, in the nation, in the region. And the way to win Draupadi is to shoot or hit a moving target with your bow, with your arrow. And so it doesn't just represent physical skills. It also represents like concentration. It also represents your maturity, because to hit a moving target, you need patience, you need a good, clear mind. So it was just a giveaway of the kind of man that is the best for Draupadi, the kind of man that is very calm, is very, is just a lot of vitality and a lot of passion, a lot of motivation, and just is not willing to lose. That kind of man. So, and the Pandavas hear about this. So do the Kauravas. And they both show up and they both try to shoot the moving target. Now, one of the greatest archers in the region is Arjuna, who is part of the Pandavas. And Arjuna is a very handsome man. He is the most precious asset for Drona. Drona there. Oh, there it is. We're now here. Draupadi, archery, Arjuna. And Arjuna hits the moving target and he wins Draupadi. Simultaneously, though, the Pandavas get discovered, because now Arjuna's won Draupadi, and now we all know that the Pandavas are not dead as we thought they were from the house burning. Now they're discovered. So Arjuna goes up to his mother and says, "Hey, Mom, look what I won. I won Draupadi, the most beautiful woman in town." And Mom says, "Son, whatever you win, you must share with your brothers." So all 5 brothers are now husbands of Draupadi. So Draupadi gets 5 husbands. She's happy. The husbands are all happy. Everyone's happy. So Bhishma, who we talked about, is a very wise character. Bhishma now decides to split the kingdom, because obviously the Pandavas are back and now they're both settled. He decides, well, I need to, make a good resolution here for both sides, the Pandavas and Kauravas, to be happy. So he just splits the kingdom in half. And he gives the Kauravas, that is the one with the Duryodhana in there, gives them the bigger half. And the Pandavas with Arjuna and Draupadi, that is the 5 brothers in Draupadi, gets the smaller half. But because the Pandavas are so successful, they build their own city called Indraprastha. There it is. You see? The Kauravas, the Pandavas, and the Indraprastha. Now, back to Duryodhana. This guy is mad. He wants to destroy them. He's like, how could these guys be so successful? I don't understand them. So he tries to destroy them again. And it doesn't work until a good plan comes up. He challenges Dharmaputra, remember he's the wisest in the Pandavas, to a game of dice. Oh, very irresistible, right? Because that was like, Dharmaputra, I can play this, I love this. But what Dharmaputra didn't know, that, we're on page 2 now, that Duryodhana, being a very cunning figure, invited the greatest trickster in town, the greatest dice player, called Shakuni, number 12. And Dharmaputra wasn't happy about this. He knew there's no way I could win against this guy. But that part of us, despite being good, we do what? We hope, greed. Maybe there's a chance. So that part takes over Dharmaputra, and he cannot resist, knowing his chances are very low. You relate to that part of yourself? Knowing your chances are very low, knowing that it's probably not going to work out the way you would like it, you still go for it. Yeah, that part. That greedy part that just depends, it just hopes. It fantasizes, it imagines, but it doesn't work out. So that part takes over Dharmaputra, and being a human being says, okay, I'm going to play a game of dice. Obviously, because the greatest trickster in town, Shakuni, is playing, they lose everything. The Pandavas are toast. Now, they lose everything so much so that they don't even know what to offer. So they offer themselves to the Kauravas. They even offer all 5 brothers themselves to the Kauravas. And then they even offer Draupadi to the Kauravas. Now, Duryodhana, this guy, he's still not happy. He won everything. This greedy part of us that says more, still not happy. So he decides to humiliate Draupadi in the public. Like a woman, innocent woman. He decides to humiliate her just to get a little kick out of it. That part of us that always wants to kind of, find a way like, I want more. My way. That part of us. And he insults her and he humiliates her. And Dhritarashtra, remember we talked about Dhritarashtra, the king, is not happy about this. Because he's now afraid that the Kauravas and the situation, their status is gonna deflate in the society. They're not gonna be well thought of because they insulted the poor woman. So Dhritarashtra, who by the way is a blind king. Now what does blind king imply? Ignorance. So he's ignorant. So his love for Duryodhana, his son, is so great that his rationale is completely covered with ignorance. So he cannot see the adharmic actions of his son Duryodhana, who has been performing adharmic actions, that is actions which are immoral, from day one. His love is so huge for his son that he lets his son get away with all of these things. Cheating, taking all of the Pandavas' money, humiliating the wife. He just cannot stop her. You know what I'm talking about? Love, when it takes over, then we become blind over what is and we see what we want to see. Why? Because our rationale, our intellect, which we will talk about, has been suspended, at least momentarily. So that's what happens when your mind is, by the way, left untrained. The mind just takes over. That is, you become a subject to the whimsical, to the vicissitudes of daily circumstances and life. You become a dancer of life when your mind is untrained. In other words, whatever happens, you just go with it. This is very common in relationships. Women get excited and they just go with the guy because it's exciting, it feels good. Why? Because their intellect isn't developed. There's no discriminating power. You see? So we have to talk about the mind and the intellect, because the intellect, this is where moksha happens. This is where you need a very acute intellect to understand yourself from non-separate from everything else. Because as long as it remains uninvestigated, what? The mind predominates. That is, your emotions are dominant. And that means what? Sentimentality, emotionality. And that does not help you at all with moksha. So, that's the king's problem. So he is blinded by the love. And so he lets Duryodhana humiliate his wife, and then he asked Draupadi for forgiveness because he knows he's going to have this event of humiliation is going to have negative repercussions on the families. And Draupadi says, okay, release my brothers and myself. And so Dhritarashtra, the king, releases them. Now, Duryodhana still isn't happy. There's no happiness to this guy. He's just never satisfied. Guy, go, whatever it is. So he invites the Pandavas, who are now free, to another game of dice. And he says, he makes it even more tempting now. He says, if you win, then you get everything back and we will go 13 years exile. That means we'll leave you alone. But if we win, then you will go 13 years exile. And on the last year of those 13 years, you must remain covert. In other words, undiscovered. And if you remain discovered, then you will go for another 13 years. So, Dharmaputra knows he's going to play against Shakuni, who is the greatest player, and he goes and plays anyway, despite knowing that he's going to lose. Why? Because the intellect has been suspended by the excitement of the game, the emotions. You see? That's what happens when your emotions take over the intellect. Then intellect doesn't get a chance. You don't get a chance to discriminate. Is this wise? Where is this leading to? What are the consequences of this? What could happen because when I do get involved, how could this affect the society? We don't think like that when there's just emotions involved, do we? We just think for ourselves. This feels good, let's do it. Right? Yeah, that's the emotions. Now, we're not discarding emotions, we're just talking about how to address the emotions. That's what part 1 deals with. It's a huge part of the Gita. So now, Duryodhana, we're number 16. Okay, so after the 13 years, that is after the exile period, the Dharmaputra asked Krishna to go to Hastinapura, the city where the Kauravas are, and to tell Duryodhana that we would like our Indraprastha back, our city that we've built. Remember, the Indraprastha is a city that they have built, the Pandavas. And Duryodhana says no. In fact, he doesn't even give him 5 houses to stay. In other words, he's just non-negotiable. There's nothing you can do. There's no rationale that you can do at this part of us which just is not going to buy anything. And that part of us is called the material part of us that we all identify with one way or another. The part that the ego part, the I want part. So the Pandavas are good. They try to negotiate. They try to do everything they can, and all of their attempts fail. And they said the only way to settle this dispute is to have a war at the Kurukshetra. It's a popular, very well-known name. Kurukshetra is a battlefield where these two sides have fought. So they both go, Arjuna and Duryodhana, they go to Krishna because they knew that Krishna is a very powerful figure. And they go to Krishna and say, actually, Krishna, before they speak to him, Krishna was sleeping on his on his right side. And Duryodhana walks to his head, while Arjuna walks to his feet. Now, who is Duryodhana in this case? We discussed the selfish part of us, right? The head. And Arjuna, a perennial seeker, a spiritual seeker, walks where? To the feet. Now, what are feet a symbol of? Understanding. What do you think Indians, whether they know about this or not, it's a huge thing in India. Why do you think they worship the feet? It's that which stands under and therefore supports what is above.
Blessing?
Yeah. So what? It's a symbol of the self. It's that because of which all creation rests on, you could say. It's that your feet are that which supports your body. So it's that which stands under and lets what? Creation be what it is. Therefore, the feet, for that reason, are the symbol. That's why they worship the feet. They're worshiping the self. They're worshiping the Ishvara 1 and 2. Now, in the West, we do have an unfortunate distortion of this. It's called a foot fetish. And so they took this as a form of beautiful feet. And men don't understand why are they beautiful, because they are that symbol of the self, and it's inbuilt. We all understand it because it's a non-dual reality. So we start to have funny ideas about feet. But that's what the feet mean. It's the symbol of the self. So Krishna, because he's sleeping on his side, he opens his eyes, and the first person he sees is Arjuna, because he doesn't see Duryodhana. He's over here. And he says, because I saw Arjuna first, I am going to let Arjuna have the first take on whether he wants me or my army. And Arjuna, believe it or not, says, I want you, Lord. He's not interested in. Is a material seeker interested in material things? No. He's interested in what? The truth. And Duryodhana, of course, is like, oh my God, this guy's a goofball. I get to have the whole army. He's finished. So Duryodhana walks away. He's happy. He's got his army. He only identifies with that part that only identifies with material, solid body, mind, thoughts, intelligence, that part. That's Duryodhana. And Arjuna is now on the battlefield. This is the next section. We are at the last part, number 20. Arjuna is now on the battlefield, and he tells Krishna, who is the driver of the charioteer, of the chariot, the little cart, tells Krishna to drive to the center, to the middle of the battlefield, Kurukshetra, so that Arjuna can see the big picture of how both armies are laid out. And Arjuna is full of war spirit. He is happy, courageous, enthusiastic, and he is ready to fight because he's been at this for a while. He wants to defeat these guys who are impossible to rationalize with. And as soon as he comes to the middle of the battlefield, his heart melts. He loses his resolve. He turns emotional. As soon as he sees his two dear friends, Drona and Bhishma, the very two people who have been with him since day one, before the whole conflict arose, he just goes, how can I kill? How can I kill and how can I gain victory and be happy if I have to spill the blood of all of these friends who I've been with from day one? How can I do that, Krishna? There is no way that I can get out of this. And so Krishna, from that moment on, speaks to Arjuna, who is us, the seeker, and tells him or her how to regain your composure. Do what you need to do so that you can move on to moksha, that is the final stage of life. So Arjuna is you, the seeker. It's us, the ones that are seeking. Who are we? And from this moment, Krishna advises him, and the whole Bhagavad Gita, 18 chapters, is everything that Krishna says to Arjuna. Okay. Any questions so far? So far we have covered what? We have covered the Bhagavad Gita, the general story, without going too much detail. And the Bhagavad Gita in this class, from next 66 sessions, will be only specifically about moksha. It's not going to be about like stories, and we're just interested in this final stage called moksha. So all of the teachings are going to be reflected on what Bhagavad Gita, all the points in the verses are going to be in reflection of moksha. So this is not about understanding the story of the Bhagavad Gita or being well versed in it. That you can do by yourself. It's about how does this apply to me? Like, how can I use this in daily life so that when I do, I live a happy, successful life and I understand who I am and that I am non-separate from everything else? How do I come to that understanding where I can discern satya from mithya, truth from apparently real? Because that's what moksha means. So that's all we're interested in here. Okay. Any questions? All right. Sure, it's just around the corner. There's a little alien on the picture. The toilet. It's a man, woman, and an alien. Okay. Now let's begin the scripture. This is from the Bhagavad Gita. Chapter 2 to 6. Part 1. Knowledge, karma, free will, purification, and meditation. So part 1 consists of knowledge, that is, who am I? Karma, karma yoga, that means converting your everyday actions, that is your karma, into yoga, into sadhana, into practice. Free will, we're going to discuss if you really have free will or do you not have free will, and how do you, there's always a yes and no, remember? In Maya, there's always a yes and no for everything. And how to, if you do, use it in a way that leads to this final reality, moksha. Purification, this is a big qualification. To understand this, you need to have a clear mind. If I'm thinking about woman and I'm thinking about money and I'm thinking about worldly entanglements, I'm not going to be thinking about this. That's just common sense, isn't it? If I'm thinking about just living a good life here on earth, I'm not going to be engaged in contemplating or inquiring on the self. There's no way. So for that reason, the primary qualification needs to be purification of the mind. This is where yoga comes in. So we're not discarding yoga. We're just saying that yoga has a very important purpose only to purify the mind. It cannot, no action can lead to moksha because you are already the total. Do you exist? Yes. What? And you said what at the beginning? Can you do anything about not exist? Can you not exist? So how are you going to do an action why do you need to do an action if you already exist? Isn't that the primary, the general, just the primary, most important idea that I exist? What more do you want than just existence itself? So that means what? No action can lead to moksha, even though action is required for moksha. This is a paradox. They talk in the scriptures and needs to be resolved. And the way we resolve it is like this. If I know what I want, that is supreme, the truth, to know myself as that which is non-separate, how are you going to arrive there without, for example, purifying the mind? You can't. You need to purify the mind. Otherwise, if you're thinking about worldly entanglements, you ain't going to be thinking about inquiry of the self. But simultaneously, if you try to obtain what you already are, is that going to work? If you already are existence and you're trying to obtain existence, are you going to be successful? No, because you just can't do anything about your existence. You exist. It's a simple statement. That's it. It's simple as that. So no action can give you what you already have. So this is a big myth in the yogis, for example. I spend a lot of time with them, so I know the world of yoga and what the yogis and meditation and vipassana and all these things. They're beautiful sadhanas for purification, but that's all they're going to lead you to. They're not going to lead you to moksha because you cannot do anything about who you already are. It's a simple statement. Okay.
On that, so you can't go to who you already are, but who are you surrendering to? Are you surrendering to yourself?
Okay, but what is, okay, sure. What do you mean by the self?
Oh, I don't know. So to
okay,
change the
okay,
words,
yeah.
Everything I'm saying is based on ego right now. Even I think wanting liberation is ego-driven. I'm not really sure. But the ego is supposed to surrender to something.
Yeah.
But that surrender is the self, or Brahman, right? I'm not...
Okay, from so far I'll say yes. The question was, are you surrendering to yourself? Yes. Because, is there anything else other than the total? Are you excluded from the total? When I say total, I mean, what does total mean? That means nothing is excluded. Okay? Are you separate from total or are you inclusive of the total?
I don't know.
Okay, if you were exclusive of the total, how is it that you're having this experience right now, which is what?
Oh, okay, that's what you mean. Yeah.
Okay, are we getting? Are we?
Yeah, so I always have to be within the total. Because right now, I don't feel like the total. I feel like a body and mind.
Yep, got it.
But I'm part of the total.
Yes, you're part of the total. So the question was, am I surrendering to myself? So that means what? If you are part of the total, what else are you surrendering to than yourself? If you are part of the total.
Surrendering to the parts that I don't think are me.
Is that part also part of the total? No matter what part it is. Remember, parts, synergy means what? The parts which comprise the what? The total. So no matter what part are you surrendering to, you're surrendering to what?
The self.
Which is what? Part of?
The total.
And the total is?
The self. Or me.
Yes, you. So it's a personal pronoun and you start speaking I. I am that total. It feels very weird to say that I am the total, by the way. It feels fraud. Like I am consciousness. There's nothing beyond me. It feels very fraud. I understand, because Maya makes it like that. We're going to talk a lot. Why do you feel small? Why do you not, quote, feel like it? Okay. And yes, I know some of you read about Nisargadatta. It talks about the I sense. Now, I'm going to say very directly, I know the teachings, and Nisargadatta and both Ramana Maharshi, they weren't proper teachers. What they're saying is extremely accurate, but the terminology they're using is improper. For example, the I sense, okay, are you talking about in Vedanta we have the reflected jiva, that is the sense of the body, the mind, or are you referring to the I, because of which the I knows about the object? In other words, are you talking about the knower, because of which the knower knows about the known? That's what the Ramana calls the I behind the I. So all of these things we're going to break down so you understand directly what these sages are speaking of. And so does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Sort of so far.
If the ego surrenders to everything, the ego is still there.
You cannot get rid of the ego, because the ego, as we will talk about, is the door enjoyer. If the ego dies, nobody will be speaking right now. This personality and that personality are both, quote, ego. They're just the way you express. Yeah. So the ego never dies. It's just purified in accordance to that which, when it's purified completely, then it's Ishvara. There's no more dur. The person dies. It's just Ishvara flowing through. So there is still an ego, but there is not a personal person doing effort. It's a surrender to what? The total, which you are. That means you're what? Surrendering to God, surrendering to Ishvara. So that's what it means when you're surrendered to God. It means there's no person that is doing anything. It's just the total absolute flow, because the person has, quote, died. It's not really died, but the person is no longer doing personal actions based on likes and dislikes, because that's gone.
Like you were talking about when ignorance is gone.
Yes.
That's when you get moksha. But what they teach in Vipassana, they also are eliminating ignorance. So when they eliminate ignorance,
right, got it. Okay, Vipassana.
How is it different?
You cannot eliminate ignorance with experience. Vipassana is what? It's experience of what? Purity, emptiness. Just clear mind.
It's seeing things as they are, like seeing your mind as a process.
Okay, so what's the question? Vipassana, they try to remove ignorance. If Vipassana, see, because that's an action. And I said what? You cannot remove ignorance with action, even though you can remove it with action. Okay, now what does this mean? You cannot remove ignorance through an experience. That's what Vipassana, I've spoken to a lot of people in Vipassana, it's a great experience. It's like ayahuasca, it's the same thing. You just come very pure, everything's fine. But how long does that last?
It's in meditation,
yeah.
When they get calm, and then Vipassana is more about reflecting on the mind.
Yes, it's an inquiry, it's a form of self-inquiry.
So, and then they get to know the mind slowly. Yeah. What I'm seeing, like when you say the doer dies,
yeah.
So it's like I'm not doing anything.
That's right.
And it's same as when you start seeing your mind as a process, you get the same feeling. There's no ego in the sense I'm not doing anything. It's just an action. It's just a thought. It's just a feeling. I'm not doing anything.
Yeah, right. The final stage is the one that's inquiring also goes. So there's nobody else that's inquiring. So that's exactly what we're teaching, actually. We're teaching how to inquire, so the doer is still inquiring. And in the final stage, you cancel out the doer. So there's an order. It's a very systematic approach. And we get rid of ignorance how? By knowing who you are and who you are not. Okay? Not 100%, is it? 60%, huh? We're not 100% still. I see it in your eyes. Yeah.
When you talk about jiva, do you refer to as a soul?
Okay, so from what point of view? Are you referring to a religion now, or?
Not religion. Like when I say I, so
okay,
body,
no.
So who am I?
Okay, jiva is 5 koshas, 5 layers. That is the gross body, the prana, the mind, the intellect, and the vasanas, the karma. Now the jiva, let's simplify what I just said. The jiva simply means the person that is speaking now. Okay, that's it. So is that the soul? Yes. Why? Because it's a non-dual reality. So how can it be not the soul if there is only one reality here? Now, what does the soul mean? Well, we define it very precisely. We call it a soul, your subtle body. Your subtle body consists of your instruments which absorb the experience, which know about the experience. For example, if I cut my arm off, right? And the arm's there on the ground. Is that arm going to feel anything? No. So you could say, well, the arm's soulless. It has no soul, right? So what causes the arm to feel? The hand. What causes the hand to feel? From your... Huh?
The feeling.
Yeah. From the context of what we're discussing, the soul, but we don't use the soul, we call it the subtle body. Now, what happens when you cut your fingernails off or your hair? Does that hurt? No. Why? Yeah, you could call that soulless. That is, has no subtle body. So the subtle body is that which knows about the experience, which experiences. And that's why the nails or the hair has no experience. And this is just an intro, guy. We're going to get into extreme depth about all of these components. Because as I said, moksha means understanding reality as a whole. Okay.
Yeah. Just one question. I have a bit of trouble with the idea of mind and awareness, distinguishing those. I mean, as a concept level, I can get it.
Got it.
But if I'm walking around, and I do this all the time, I'm trying to appreciate just being aware, and then mind kicks in. So I'm trying to, well, this is completely confusing. I'm open to this, but there's a commentary running on mind. But I'm not really sure that I can distinguish the two. So it's very confusing.
Yeah, easy. You said, I am trying to be aware of...
Yeah, so is that the mind?
Yeah. Okay. How do you know that you're trying to know? How do you know that you're trying to be aware?
Okay, so I know the theory behind this, and I'd say that's awareness. It's awareness of my thinking. Of
awareness, yeah. So you're turning awareness into an object. That's why you said, I'm trying to be aware of, but you are that awareness that knows about you, that is the jiva trying to be aware of what you call the awareness, which is actually your mind, your thoughts of your mind. So that means what? That means every experience you have, whether it's confusing or whether it's clear, is what? Known, because of which that principle underlies it, like the feet. It stands under it. It's a substratum upon which the word is known. Can a word be known without a paper?
Okay.
Yeah. So the word is what? Your experience. But how is that word known? Because it has a substratum, the paper, the blank paper, which is what? Awareness. So no matter what experience you have, it's always known. How and why? Because you exist. So existence means what? Consciousness. Now here's a question. Is consciousness and existence different, or are they the same? Same? Okay.
Well, you can have different states of consciousness, right?
Okay.
It's colored.
Are you conscious that you exist? Are you conscious right now that you exist? Okay. Okay. how do you know that you exist?
Mind.
How do you know that I exist? How do you know that you exist?
Because we have physical sensation, we have feelings, we have...
Bingo, excellent. Because you have to be conscious. So that means what? Can you be conscious if you don't exist? If you are conscious, if you're not conscious, do you know about your existence?
We don't know.
Yeah. If you're not conscious, can you know about the fact that you exist? If you're not conscious.
You know from the mind.
But there's no consciousness. Who's there to know about the mind knowing about conscious?
Can't know.
So that means what? You have to be conscious to know that you exist, and you cannot exist unless you're conscious.
But if you are sleeping, for instance, we are not conscious.
You actually are. We're going to get into that a lot more. I know what you're talking. It's a very common question. Deep sleep. Yeah, it's very easy to negate. You're actually there in deep sleep, and you fully know about it. Okay, but we'll put that aside for now because it's not a proper context for the teaching.
I understand when you say that you need consciousness to be aware that you are existing.
Yeah.
But consciousness can be just a process. It doesn't mean that we are existing, and it doesn't mean that it is us.
Okay, and who's aware of that fact?
Consciousness. So it can be just consciousness and all mind parts operating together.
Yeah.
But maybe there is no I.
Okay, so you're mixing the mind and consciousness together. It's totally different. Mind is.
I would think that consciousness would be part of mind, right?
No. You could say consciousness is in all, but all is not in consciousness. In other words, we're going to use an analogy of later on the spider and the web. Yeah. Okay, you've heard of that one. So you got to see, this is what I mean by knowing the difference between satya and mithya, because that's where all these questions come from. We confuse who am I, so these questions are originated from that confusion. When you know, no question arises. Okay. 7:31. I wish to respectfully keep this on time. Okay, I'm going to close. Sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kashchi dukkhabhag bhavet, om shanti shanti shantihi. May all be happy, may all be free from illness, may all behold good things, may no one suffer.